The Trump administration has planned to make cuts to FEMA and to the National Weather Service, or just these different weather entities that are involved in the federal government. And I can't exactly say that I blame them, to be honest, because of the situation that happened last year with Hurricane Helene in eastern North Carolina, how it just ravaged the area with tons of rain. FEMA was extremely slow to respond to the incident, and people were sleeping in tents throughout the winter time, and like they went weeks without receiving any aid from anybody really, and it was just a really bad situation. But to be fair, on FEMA side, they were already dealing with Hurricane Helene, which pounded the Gulf Coast of Florida. And then 2 weeks later, we had Hurricane Milton. And I live in the St. Pete area, so I was directly affected by both of them. Didn't lose power with Hurricane Helene, but we did have the worst storm surge in the area in over 80 years. And then Hurricane Milton was a lot worse wind-wise, but we got through it. We survived. We were without power for a while, but anyway. So there was this unhinged, they're calling it an unhinged rant. I think Yahoo News was calling it the weatherman goes rogue on live TV. So yeah, with the Trump administration making cuts to certain scientific fields, he's talking about how he's worried that they're not going to be able to forecast hurricanes accurately this year because of budget cuts, and they're laying people off. And he's basically saying that it's going to be Trump's fault that most likely when, not if, but when we have a devastating hurricane this year, and if people can't get assistance, or if any people die at all during this hurricane, it's going to be all Trump's fault because they made budget cuts and they made staff cuts for certain weather agencies for the federal government, which I think is ridiculous. And he's also claiming that because of these cuts, we're not going to be able to forecast hurricanes accurately anymore, and we're not going to be able to track them accurately anymore, which is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, the technology is not going to go away. It's already been developed. It's already there. I'm sure a lot of these forecast models and a lot of these bits of technology that they use is automated at this point. I'm sure the weather hunters are still going to be dropping their devices into hurricanes to get weather readings and atmospheric pressure and all that stuff. All that's still going to happen. They're still going to track them, and all of that's still going to happen. But as far as as far as FEMA goes, I'm not crazy about the idea of cutting it, but he didn't outright. Well, he did say that they're planning on not only cutting FEMA but phasing out FEMA by the end of this year at the earliest. And what President Trump wants to do, he wants any disaster relief to go through the White House and to essentially get his okay first, because he doesn't want all this rampant spending on all kinds of things that don't directly help people who truly need the assistance. So anyway, I did find the video. I'm pretty sure I found it. And I just wanted to show this on Yahoo News real quick, that they were talking about this guy going rogue. John Morales, he addressed his audience, which is in a hurricane-prone area, he was in Miami-based NBC affiliate WTVJ. And he had a clip of Morales' segment, or WTVJ shared that, which began with an archival hurricane forecast about 6 years ago. Yeah, so I absolutely found the correct video. And yeah, they're going basically covering the video itself in this article, but I mean, why waste time on this article? Let me just go straight to the video. So here we go. He's talking about Hurricane Dorian that happened 6 years ago. I'm just gonna cut it because it's all they're doing is just showing what he was forecasting 6 years ago. It was basically just a flashback to 6 years ago. So not really relevant to the situation currently. They're just showing like how emotional he can get when he's predicting hurricanes, and how we're going to miss this so much because apparently this guy thinks that his job is in jeopardy because Trump's making cuts, even though he works for NBC. NBC is not a government agency, so I don't know what the hell he seems to be all that worried about. But anyway, I'll go ahead and give this a play and make sure. Yeah, I think I got the audio okay, so let's give this a shot.
And as you've grown accustomed to my presentations over my 34 years in South Florida newscasts, confidently, I went on TV and I told you it's going to turn. You don't need to worry.
Hurricane Dorian.
It is going to turn.
And it did, of course.
And I am here to tell you that I'm not sure.
It's not because he's a magic wizard. It's because all the forecast models were showing it turning. I mean, if you want to see right here in the little thumbnail there, that it was beelining for Miami, and then it did turn, which it did turn. And Hurricane Matthew actually followed a similar track to that, which everybody was freaked out about. But the weather models were correct because technology is a lot better now than it was 10, 20, 30 years ago, like during the Hurricane Andrew era that they were dealing with. But
sure, I can do that.
Let's keep going.
Because of the cuts, the gutting, the sledgehammer attack.
Oh, Trump's evil sledgehammer.
In general.
Oh, my God.
And I could talk about that for a long, long
How
time.
dare he?
And how that is affecting the U.S. Leadership in science over many years, and how we're losing that leadership.
Who have become politicized, by the way.
Impact on science in this country. All right. But specifically,
not by Trump, but
let's
by
talk
their
about
own doing.
The federal government cuts to the National Weather Service and to NOAA. Did you know that Central and South Florida National Weather Service offices are currently basically 20 to 40% understaffed? From Tampa to Key West, including the Miami office, 20 to...
Yeah, but that's according to you. I mean, are you going to give us exactly why they're understaffed? What exactly are you missing? I mean, if you're missing certain employees that you believe that you need to have, I mean, give us the nitty gritty. Tell us exactly what's missing. Because he makes it sound like that because they have fewer people on staff than they had 5-6 years ago, that all of a sudden the hurricane season is just going to ravage everything and nobody's ever going to get any help. And I mean, look, these folks are worried about job security. That's what it all comes down to. When it comes to downsizing the federal government, which the vast majority of the American population would love to hear that. It's music to their ears to hear that the federal government's going to get smaller and smaller. We already employ 3 million people with the federal government. That's kind of a high number. It's kind of bloated. And the federal government needs to downsize. Our federal deficit, it's crossing $37 trillion. It's not going down, even with the Doge cuts, even with Trump back in office. It's not going down. It's still going up and up and up. And the only possible feasible way that they can reduce the deficit is if we cut government employees, we cut government programs, cut government agencies, make it smaller. Allow the states to govern themselves more efficiently and more effectively. Stop taking every little issue that's going on in the country and just dumping it into the federal government's lap. And of course, the people who appear to possibly may have their jobs cut in the future, they're going to be the ones that are going to be freaking out the most. They're going to be the most vocal because nobody wants to lose their job. And if somebody's job is being threatened and they have a platform or they have a microphone or they have a TV camera, of course they're going to go ape shit over it because they don't want to lose their job. Even though I don't think this guy's going to end up losing his job. I mean, he's probably been the front runner meteorologist for this weather station for, like he said, 34 years or something like that. So I'm sure he's going to be fine. But anyway, let's go on and see what you said.
Understaffed. Now, this type of staffing shortage is having impacts across the nation because there's been a nearly 20% reduction in weather balloon launches that carry those radio sondes. And well,
what about satellite technology? I mean, how many weather satellites have we launched that help take care of what these weather balloons already do, measuring atmospheric pressure and things like that? I mean, what pieces of technology have been implemented that would do just as good of a job as a weather balloon would do? I mean, a weather balloon sounds kind of like ancient technology to me. I mean, I don't know everything there is to know about weather balloons, so maybe I'm completely wrong about that. But I mean, I've also heard that they're implementing AI into weather models and into, weather predictions and things like that. So maybe it's just not as relevant as it used to be, dude.
But what do I know? Is that the quality of the forecasts is becoming degraded. There's also a chance, because of some of these cuts, that NOAA Hurricane Hunter aircraft will not be able to fly this year, and with less reconnaissance missions, we may be flying blind.
I doubt that. I really doubt that. I'll believe it when I see it. If there's a Category 3, predicted Category 5 hurricane that's beelining across the Caribbean, and any of the states, not just Florida, but any state is in the bullseye, they are not going to keep those weather hunters grounded. We're going to need the data, the accurate data, when they drop those weather instruments into the storm. It's going to happen. Will they fly through it every half an hour? Well, it's not every half hour. I think they fly through it every, 3-4 hours to get those updated readings. Maybe they may not fly through it as frequently when it's way off in the Eastern Caribbean and it's like 10 days away from reaching the United States coast. they might not be flying them frequently through there constantly when it's way off and not affecting us for the next week or so. Maybe when the hurricane gets to a point where it's only 4 days away expected or 3 days away, that's when they'll probably start ramping up the number of times that they get readings from the hurricane to update the current hurricane conditions. They're not going to stay grounded. I think that's hyperbolic. That's just him just kind of rage baiting the audience into thinking that, oh my God, Trump is just going to leave us flying blind and we're just going to be devastated, and it's just going to be this weather nightmare that we're going to be stuck with. No,
we may not exactly know how strong a hurricane is.
See, he said we may not
the
know.
Coastline, like happened a couple of years ago.
He's throwing out opinions.
In Acapulco, Mexico. So I was asked to talk about this today. I'm glad I was.
Yeah, whatever.
I just want you to know that what you need to do
he demanded
is
to
call
talk
your
about
representatives and make sure that these cuts are stopped.
Yeah, right, whatever. So anyway, that was the unhinged rant that he went on. I mean, he wasn't really unhinged. He was calm the whole time, but yeah, I think he's throwing out a lot of inaccuracies when it comes to the future of what's going to happen in the hurricane season, but we'll see. We'll just see what ends up happening. So I'll go over a little bit more information as to what's going on with the hurricane season this year. Anybody who lives in the Gulf states and state of Florida like myself, and what to expect. Of course, all of the climate specialists and all the climatologists and everybody, just like every other year, it seems throughout the entire history of keeping records and everything with hurricanes, they always say it's going to be bad. It's going to be worse than last year. It's almost always that way, unless there's like a strong El Nino or something like that, where it's like clear cut textbook going to be a pretty relaxed season. Wind shear is heavy across the ocean, and development just really isn't going to happen. Okay, then they might back off and say, okay, we're not going to have that bad of a hurricane season this year. But even if they catch a whiff that it could possibly be as bad or potentially worse than last year, of course they're going to jump all over it. And they're going to blame climate change, which is kind of ironic because climate change, if the Earth keeps warming up, it's only going to reduce the number of hurricanes we get, because as the climate heats up more, it increases global wind shear. It doesn't decrease, it increases global wind shear, which prevents hurricanes from developing at least into major hurricanes. Hurricanes that are going into strong wind shear environments in the Atlantic or even in the Pacific Ocean, they can't develop to the extent that a Category 3 hurricane would develop into if there's strong wind shear in the environment, and that's what's going to happen if the Earth keeps warming up. But anyway, so the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season, of course, we know it goes from June 1st until November 30th. Month of June's usually pretty quiet, but it happens. Sometimes hurricanes happen in June. The same goes with November. Not common, but it happens. Forecasted to be above average by several meteorological institutions, and here's a summary of the predictions. So NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, a 60% chance of an above normal season. So, I mean, not a strong likelihood. I like how they throw in these percentages. Like they just try to keep it as just generalized and vague as possible. With 13 to 19 named storms. Again, that's a pretty wide gap, and they do this every year, and that's what's annoying. I mean, well, is it 13 or is it 19? That's a pretty big difference between the two. And they're saying 6 to 10 could be hurricanes and 3 to 5 to be major hurricanes. So if only 13 develop, only 6 of which are hurricanes, and only 3 become major hurricanes, is that still considered above average? I mean, it doesn't really seem like it would be, but... And they also say a 30% chance of a near normal season and only a 10% chance of a below normal season. And they're 70% confident. That's some reassurance for you. So the Colorado State University, they forecast above average also. 17 named storms, 9 hurricanes, 4 major. And AccuWeather, 13 to 18 named storms that they're going with, between 7 and 10 hurricanes. And AccuWeather also pointed out that they expect between 3 and 6 direct U.S. impacts to be expected, particularly along the northern and eastern Gulf Coast and the Carolinas. So at least as far as AccuWeather is concerned, they're not expecting much to happen with the state of Florida, at least not on the Gulf side, maybe on the Atlantic side. Let's see, rapid storm intensification due to high ocean heat content in the Gulf and the Caribbean. So 3 to 6 direct impacts. I mean, they don't mention tropical storms in this paragraph. So, I mean, 3 to 6 hurricanes hitting the U.S. is a pretty high number. So I don't know, man. We'll see. The Weather Company. I thought it was the Weather Channel. Now I guess it's the Weather Company. Goes to show how long it's been since I've had cable. Anticipates a well above average season with 19 named storms, 9 hurricanes, and 4 major hurricanes. Yeah, the Weather Channel, they're always insanely dramatic when it comes to all this. They absolutely love these disastrous predictions because it keeps eyes glued to them. They want everything to be doom and gloom to the maximum scale that they could possibly keep it at, because if it bleeds, it leads. If it's dramatic, people will just keep watching it, and that's how they make money. They make money by freaking people out and scaring them to death. So, of course, the weather company is going to go with 19 hurricanes, which is a lot, or 19 named storms, rather. That's not hurricanes. That's tropical storms included. 9 hurricanes, which is fairly high. 4 major hurricanes. That's also a pretty high number, historically speaking. And for other forecasts, we've got the tropical storm risk, which predicts 16 named storms, 8 hurricanes, and 4 major hurricanes with an ACE of 146, which is slightly above average. University of Arizona, they're saying that it's probably going to be a normal season with 15 named storms, 7 hurricanes, and 3 major. And then there's a few others: University of Missouri, Met Office, North Carolina State University. So the key factors that influence the season, they include sea surface temperatures, which focuses on the Atlantic, the Gulf of Mexico, and Caribbean. And they're expecting it to be warmer than average, the surface temperatures on the ocean surface, although it's not as warm as in 2024. Warm waters fuel hurricane development and intensification. So if the sea surface temperatures are not as high this year, that means that they're cooler this year, by the way. It doesn't mean they're warmer. It means they're cooler. I don't really see, just based on that alone, how it would be a much worse hurricane season than last year, if not a little less. But again, wind shear, wind currents, like there's other things that go into it. It's not just sea surface temperature. So anyway, ENSO conditions, the current weak La Nina is expected to transition to neutral by the summer, with a moderate chance of La Nina redeveloping later, which typically reduces wind shear and supports hurricane formation. El Nino, which suppresses hurricane activity, yes, it does, is unlikely. So, yeah, if wind shear reduces, that bumps up the possibility of not only hurricane development, but major hurricane development. Wind shear forecasting indicate we're going to have a low wind shear season, which is favorable for hurricanes. The regional risks, the Gulf Coast, which is Texas, Louisiana, Western Florida, and the Carolinas, Atlantic Canada, and the Northeastern Caribbean, face higher than average risks of direct impacts. So yeah, not good news for my neck of the woods. I'm in the Western Florida area. Let's see here, comparing to historical averages in 2024. So, you can pause and read this for yourself. It's just going over historical information. And they're concerned about rapid intensification, the risk of landfall in the U.S., the uncertainty of the forecast. Seasonal forecasts are not landfall predictions. Residents in hurricane-prone areas should prepare regardless of the outlook. Absolutely. Look, the state of Florida, we didn't have any hurricanes from October of 2025, which is only one, or not 2025, October of 2005, which is only about a month or so after I first moved here. We didn't have a hurricane from that point, which would have been Hurricane Wilma, all the way up until Hurricane Hermine. It was in 2016, maybe it might have been September, maybe October of 2016. So we went over 10 years without a single hurricane hitting Florida. And regardless of that, I always stayed prepared. And I think everybody else should be too, for very obvious reasons, because you just never know. You never know. A lot of these hurricanes could come out of nowhere. That's what happened with Hurricane Milton. Go back and look at Hurricane Milton. From the first day that it developed into a tropical storm, it came out of effing nowhere. And it was weird, man. People were saying that Hurricane Milton, it was modified by the government. What's the program? HARP or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, apparently they were using cloud seeding techniques, and they were doing that because the election was right around the corner. And if Florida were to get devastated by a hurricane, fewer people would turn out to vote. And they were expecting Trump to win Florida. And if we got ravaged by a hurricane, then we'd be too preoccupied to go out and vote on election day. I know it sounds insane, but I read about that. I read about it, and people were expecting that. But anyway, if you look at Hurricane Milton developing, it just absolutely came out of nowhere. It developed over by Texas, and it just crossed all the way across the Caribbean. Very unusual. Looking at the historic track of hurricanes, that either enter the Gulf or they form in the Gulf. They almost never take that track that Milton took, just beelining directly for the west coast of Florida. It was freaking weird. It's not to say it hasn't happened. Like even Hurricane Wilma, I mean, it was tracking north northwest, and then it stalled over Cozumel, and they dumped like 50 inches of rain. And I'm not exaggerating. It literally dumped almost that much rain because it stalled out over Cozumel, and then it started making a right-hand turn, and it beelined straight for the Gulf Coast of Florida. So it followed a similar track to Milton. But anyway, so the current activity as of June 12th, that's when I did this search. So it's, as of this recording, it's June the 14th. But I believe it is, right? I think it's June 14th. It's Sunday. Maybe it's the 15th. Yeah, it's the 15th. Oh my God. It's the 15th. But anyway, no development happening. And last I checked, there still isn't. So anyway, that's some of the detailed information as far as the 2025 hurricane season is looking. And I've got this from Fox Weather. And this guy, he's in Treasure Island, Florida, which is my neck of the woods. And they're going into the above average hurricane season. So let's give this a watch.
Hurricane HQ Eye on the Season, sponsored by Anchor Solix.
The storm surge from Hurricane Helene.
Pinellas County, that's my county.
Pinellas County barrier islands. Here on St. Pete Beach, many homes had several feet of water up into their first.
Yeah, Helene was a doozy, man.
Right here that
Worst storm surge in 80 years.
That was almost completely
You see all those blue flashes? That's electrical.
On the causeway, just looking for a little bit of last-minute elevation.
Like the 4th of July,
Right
man.
this spot that we saw off in the distance, this massive power.
Yeah, look at that. Yep,
That was
yep.
when we knew it was time to go.
Yeah, Hurricane Helene, Hurricane Milton. I mean, like, dude, when I saw that, I knew it was time to go. I mean, you're not going to get electrocuted from standing there. It's happening to transformers, to power lines, to substations. I mean, yeah, like during both of them, during Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton, the sky was filled with just this bright blue glowing and flashing, and you could even hear the electricity. With Hurricane Milton, I was hearing it all night long. There was power lines fell somewhere in my neighborhood, and we just kept hearing womp 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 womp. It was kind of scary, to be honest, because it was just an unusual and loud noise. And we had been without power well before that even started happening. But yeah, whenever you see those blue glows in the sky, I mean, he could turn the camera around in a 360-degree direction. You'll see those things. You'll see those glows happening everywhere. And it's just from the hurricane just wrecking the electrical infrastructure, trees falling down on power lines, and all kinds of shit. Like it was pretty lit, no pun intended, but it was wild.
And welcome back to Hurricane HQ, Eye on the Season. I'm Fox Weather's Ian Oliver. And
Hurricane
that
HQ.
contrast right there, it's still
Treasure
stunning
Island's
to
nice,
see.
man.
There are places
It's a very
you
wide
drive
beach,
around
though.
Here. We're on Treasure Island on the beautiful Pinellas County coastline.
The
in
beach I
Florida.
live near is,
You drive around and it's like nothing happened.
I live near
Excuse
Indian
me,
Shores,
there are other
very narrow
places
beach,
where there are still
mostly
very
residential,
obvious
quiet,
signs of what played out last year.
just the
There
way I
are
like it.
folks that are still working to recover.
I haven't been to the beach in
And that's going to
forever.
be a process that goes on for a considerable period of time as we move into a new hurricane season.
3 to 5 major. That's
I do
not
wanna
to say
bring
they're going to hit
back
the
in,
U.S.
Fox Weather's Jamie Menard
You know, there's
in New York City.
many places hurricanes could hit. Hurricanes could hit the Caribbean. They could hit. There's Central America. There's Mexico. There's quite a few different places that hurricanes could hit. So, yeah, 3 to 5 major expected. I mean, even a major hurricane may not hit anything. Hurricane can develop, and they often do develop out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and they'll just make a turn up to the north, and then they'll start heading up toward like Greenland or the UK or something like that. So there's a lot of major hurricanes that they don't even like affect the coastlines. So I just wanted to throw that out there,
For a
just to kind of ease the nervousness.
This is a place that dealt with back-to-back hurricanes last year. It was a couple of weeks apart.
But dude, that was exceptionally rare.
With folks around here, I mean, you see what's going on behind
When was the
me,
last
Jamie.
time that happened?
Caddies, by the
And
way.
they did,
I
man.
said
Back
they
to back.
reopened in March.
We
It's
got
a
screwed
temporary
last year,
tent.
man.
Their main building is still destroyed, and they're working through, hey, what's the future going to look like here? So this is why people live here. You see behind me what's going on. It's a beautiful beach day in Florida.
Yeah,
What
but
the
don't look
deal
at our
is that
insurance
half the
nightmare.
season, you've got an eye on the Gulf. You've got an eye on the Atlantic because there
Oh,
are
yeah.
hazards that could be brewing.
And now is the time to prepare. No,
'Tis the season.
There, slightly above average forecast, 13 to 19 storms. That's 13 to 19 chances that you could see an impactful.
I mean, given the
system
last
once
5-6
again
years,
on the
man, that's
Gulf
kind of
Coast,
average at
even
this
the East
point.
Coast of the United States. When we look towards the Atlantic,
It's almost as if the Earth isn't getting hotter. Because if it was, we would be getting a reduced number of hurricanes.
If we look back to last year,
Right.
we had incredibly
Not to get
warm
conspiratorial,
water. It's another
but-
factor that we're watching this season. But we had a kind of a head scratcher last year during peak months.
Yep,
late
September's
August,
always rough.
September, we ended up with a
Now, for
massive
those of us who live on the Gulf Coast, it's October. Well, more specifically, the Gulf Coast of Florida. That's the time of year that we really start biting our nails, because that's when cold fronts start coming down from Canada and they sweep across the U.S. and they start sagging down into the Gulf. And if there's any storms that are out in the Gulf or making their way toward the Gulf, those cold fronts will turn. They'll almost always turn the hurricane straight into our direction. So, yeah, October, that's the time that I get worried. Rightfully so, because that's when we got hit by hurricanes last year.
In modern satellite era.
At least I think Helene was in late September.
Yeah, so that tells us a little something about the purpose of these seasonal
Yeah,
forecasts.
it
right?
was
'Cause
late September.
There was that hyperactive forecast for last year, which did end up verifying because of how backloaded the season was. But even as we talk about this forecast for an active season, it tells us nothing about, Jane, where the storms, the number of storms, as you said, where they're
19-day
going,
stretch of
which is
no-name
why you have
storms,
to
longest in
prepare
satellite
now, and that's
era
why
during peak
Fox Weather
season.
is here with
Interesting.
this special to get folks thinking about what they'll do if another storm
Yeah,
starts
dude, look at
heading
that
their way
footage.
this season.
Crazy.
It's not just one factor that's going to drive.
I will say that footage they're showing was almost certainly not Helene, and it was not Milton, because both of those storms happened at night, which absolutely freaking sucked, man. And same with Hurricane Irma. That was in the middle of the night, too. I mean, that was also kind of a nightmare as well. And yeah, it sucked.
Tropical activity.
Nighttime
Yes,
storms are
warm
just
water
awful.
temperatures definitely there. And in fact, we saw a lot of that at the beginning of the season. When you look at the accumulated cyclone energy ACE, we look to see how active the season can be. I mean, we had Beryl right at the top. Main development region, we'll talk more
Yeah, the
about
ACE,
Beryl, of
accumulated
course.
cyclone
Throughout
energy.
The year it went down in history, but then that lull and the backloaded, near record activity we had with Helene, Milton back to back. But even between Helene and Milton,
I mean, not to keep pausing, but this average, it's increasing year after year, correct? Because the last 5 or 6 years, it's been above average, I believe. So I'm assuming they're adjusting that number year after year, because you have to factor in every hurricane season we get. You have to factor that into the average. So I would assume that this average is probably higher than it was last year.
let's not forget we had like 3 or 4 named storms in the basin. So just kind of something to look for. I mean, we have to look into other things like the storm track of the African monsoon. Those are the seeds that come off the African coast and work their way across the main development region. Last year was shifted to the north, and so it moved into hostile winds, and it kicked up a lot of Saharan dust.
Yeah, Jane, you
mentioned Saharan dust is
We
interesting.
can have storms turning up a bunch
We get
of
that around
haze
here sometimes.
somewhere over open water on
It
the
turns a
basin
blue
and not
sky
bothering
like a milky
people,
white
but
color.
when these storms strike land and they impact people, that's where the big problems start to occur, and that's what we're hoping to avoid moving through this 2025 season.
All right, well, there you have it. There you go. That's kind of the updates that they're talking about. Not too much info. I do have another video, which I think I'm going to skip for this video, but I'll probably make another video on this maybe in the next day or so. This one, hurricane season, will be very different. 2025 hurricane season outlook. It's on the channel Just Weather. So I'm mainly not going to do that right now because it's 22 minutes long, and I don't really want to skip any of it because they go through the video just giving info throughout. So it's going to be kind of difficult to skip through and really see highlights because it's kind of a video of highlights as far as the season goes. So I'll see if I can do a video on that coming up pretty soon. But anyway, I did want to jump into this one. Hurricanes and AI. Apparently they're using AI, Google's new AI-based hurricane model. And apparently they're starting to factor that into their modeling, which that maybe could be some justification for making certain cuts to the departments that have to deal with forecasting and just weather in general. Maybe, I mean, look, they've been talking about that for a while. They're saying AI, they're coming after jobs and they're replacing jobs and whatnot. So maybe it isn't necessarily all Trump's fault. Maybe it's AI. maybe you got some of that to blame. Of course, they're not going to blame AI, not as long as Trump's there. But anyway, let's see what they got to say here with
Hi,
with
everybody.
AI
Brian
and
Norcross here.
hurricanes.
Big and interesting developments today in the world of forecasting hurricanes for hurricane season 2025. Google is out with a new specially designed artificial intelligence AI model, or they call it a machine learning model, just for hurricanes, for tropical storms and hurricanes. The way
it's going to be interesting to see how accurate this might end up being.
Weather data going back to the 1980 range, and they took the tropical cyclone or tropical storm and hurricane data and put them together in the same model, and they did some special things within that model to create this new, very accurate model based on past storms. I had a little role in this. They asked me to be an advisor on the project and to evaluate it as it went, and I can tell you
Cool.
It was incredible to see how fast the changes can be made in artificial intelligence that could not be made in these very, very complex models that we have depended on, the Euro and the GFS and the other ones are called
those are the two big ones.
models with big, long equations and take a lot of computer power to run. These can be changed quickly and they can try new things. And boy, have they done that here through the spring as I've been watching it. And it's been extraordinarily impressive to see how this thing has come together. The National Hurricane Center is going to use it for the first time. They're going to have an AI model as part of the things they look at. They're going to look in parallel to the traditional
Interesting. They're going to factor that in, huh?
They can evaluate these things in real time as the storms actually happen, as opposed to just looking at the past storms, which of course we can do right now. In fact, let me just
we'll
show
see how that
you
goes.
what this Weather Lab, as they're calling it,
Weather
looks
Lab.
like. And we'll start with Hurricane Otis from 2023. If you recall, this devastated Acapulco when it came ashore, and it kind of came ashore
Hurricane Otis.
unexpectedly. It was one of the
That was last year, wasn't it?
worst forecasts in recent memory, as a matter of fact, in terms of having a terrible outcome and not having a lot of warning. Well, here it was on the day that it became Tropical Storm Otis. At the time, the
hurricanes happen in the
typical
Pacific
models that
too.
we rely on had it up here offshore of Acapulco and dying out. And the official forecast actually had it down to a tropical depression, never got above tropical storm strength.
Really?
So the black line, that's exactly what happened. The blue line is the new Google model. You see there is in general agreement. So
all the other
difference
lines,
in
they
this
call that a
model
spaghetti
and the way
model.
The old models work. If you look at online and whatnot, you notice the old lines all put out a single line. And then there are these things
the
called
consensus
ensembles
models
where they run a bunch of them and you get this kind of fan. Well, the Google model does it the opposite way. They run the fan and then they find the average of that and they use that fan to determine, well, how
the cone
certain
maybe
is this forecast? Is it a wide fan, kind of uncertain, or is it a narrow fan? In this case, you notice it's a pretty narrow fan for the most part. There are
I'd call that narrow.
Possibilities that are quite extreme, but a pretty narrow fan, and it takes
because spaghetti models, I mean, at least with the GFS and the Euro, some of these spaghetti models, like some of these lines will go way off this way or they'll go way off that way. They'll kind of zigzag around all over the place. I mean, some of them can be inconsistent, but yeah, that was pretty uniform. So anyway,
right toward Acapulco. And when you look over here, this is the wind speed. And look at this. There's what happened. It went all the way up to Category 5.
Cat 5.
Above 150
Holy
knots.
moly.
These are in knots, so you have to multiply it by
that can't be that common in the
1.15
Pacific.
miles per hour, but whatever.
Category
5. And notice that the Google model indicated the possibility up near
4.
Category 4. So the possibility of a strong storm. Now, so this would clue forecasters into the Hurricane Center that we need to pay more attention to this because all the other models are showing tropical depression or dying out. So this is a big advance to be able to have this kind of
maybe it just got lucky.
Now, let's take a look at one from last year. Here's Helene, and here's another thing
here we go.
This new Weather Lab can do. Here you see that it actually produces a cone. Now, it is important
That's
to
the
say this
cone.
is all experimental. So this is not something that's going to replace what.
Okay, well, if it's so experimental, how come they're factoring that into the on television predictions with hurricanes? I mean, he said they're going to run that along with the GFS and the Euro models, and they're going to integrate that in, and they're going to discuss that. You know, Weather Channel is going to do it. Of course, they're going to do it because anything that just adds to the drama, they're just going to take that straight to the bank. But if it's strictly experimental, then why are they throwing it into the public eye that we're all going to be looking at if it's so experimental? I mean, you'd think, I mean, historically, they would show things that have a proven track record in science before they start rolling it out into just the standard. So I don't really know if I agree with that, but okay.
This is a dynamic cone that gets wider if there is more uncertainty. It gets narrower if it's more certain.
Well, that's the way they've always
this
done
is
it.
Very narrow. It was quite certain. It was going up into this area, this Big Bend area, still close to Tallahassee. And you can see the blue and the black line up almost exactly the same. The forecast was quite good. Here you look at the.
Now, my question is did the Google AI, did it predict this on that day where the hurricane was in that position? Or did it go back to past data and roll it back to that point in time and then run the prediction? Because if it did that, if it did the latter, then it could have tapped into information that it already had in quote unquote hindsight because the storm had already happened. So I'm just going to assume that it ran this prediction on that day. So I don't know.
And notice they're right in line. So
that's pretty
AI
accurate
model,
if it actually
AI
did.
Model, this experimental model, forecast that very well. And now let's look at one more because I'm going to show you one that was not quite so perfect.
Yeah,
Still
Milton.
forecast,
Milton was a
so
freaking
perfect.
doozy, man.
Here is Milton, and this is again way back when Milton was just developing here. And you can see where it actually went. It did this zigzaggy track. Of course, it ended up being a Category 5 down in here. And then it came up.
More like right here, dude. It was a Category 5 almost immediately.
Well, the blue.
That was another sketchy thing about that hurricane.
It's a little bit farther north, a little bit different. But in the end, it's a little closer to Tampa than it ended up. But similar to what the.
Not really. It hit almost exactly where the line's at, dude.
Look at the wind speeds. Here, the AI model did not pick up this big peak right here where it got up to Category 5, but it did have the idea of the second peak in here. So it's not perfect. Like I said, it's experimental and it's changing all the time. They are continuing to work on it.
Well, maybe it's not ready to roll out to the public yet if it's still changing.
Google DeepMind I
mean, that's supposed to be what AI does.
Has made this a high priority for this hurricane season. And this is really going to be the first hurricane season
because of the budget
cuts,
because of the job cuts.
How this specially made AI model for tropical systems is going to compare with the traditional ways of doing it. And it'll just be part of the mix. If this kind of success continues in real time this hurricane season, this is going to be an important part of our forecast.
I mean, look, every little bit helps. If it's effective, if it is relatively accurate at doing what it does, then yeah, I'm all for it. Why not? I mean, if the technology's there, let's do it. So,
and of course, I'll be looking at
I don't know. We'll see how it turns out this year, I guess. But it looks like they've been working on it for at least the last year or so.
So, interesting big day in hurricane forecasting world, both for us and for the National Hurricane Center. And now it's available.
But why
to you
Google? That's kind of weird.
It's kind of technical, as you can see, but you're welcome to look at it.
It's almost as if it's monopolistic.
The URL, I'm sure,
they're taking over the weather.
Around. It's deepmind.google.com/ deepmind.google.com. Let me just bring it up here.
Yeah, let me know.
/science/weather lab. deepmind.google.com/science/weather lab.
Hold on, I'm gonna get that one more time here. Because I'll link that.
/science/weather lab. Deep.
Hold on. /science deep what?
Mind.google.com/deepmind/weather lab. All right, so enjoy. You can go back and look at past hurricanes, and
I'll try and find it. If I find it, I'll put it in the description.
Tracks, and
Because I was
We'll
curious about
see
that to
you
see
as
if
go
we would
here
be able to see
for
it,
this
we, the
hurricane
public.
season. Nothing going on in the Atlantic right now, and nothing for the foreseeable future.
Yeah,
so
it's early.
Looks like a good
Mid-June.
June. Take care.
All right. Well, that's that AI. They're throwing AI, Google's AI, into this whole hurricane prediction, forecasting models, and all that. Makes me wonder if there's anybody else besides Google who's working on AI with predicting weather. And I mean, they don't really necessarily have to use it exclusively for hurricane predictions. They could do it for tornado outbreaks. They could do it for blizzards and all kinds of different weather. I mean, maybe not just hurricanes. And maybe they're already doing that. So anyway, so if you live in a hurricane-prone area, I'm sure you already know what this list is. It's the hurricane supplies list, but I figured since I'm talking about the hurricane season, might as well go over it. That's just one of these just textbook standard things that everybody talks about when it comes to hurricane preparedness. I mean, you got to have your supplies list if you're going to be prepared. I would say extra cash, definitely important. I had to deal with that firsthand with Hurricane Irma. But this past hurricane season, I had plenty of supplies, canned food. I mean, yeah, I ate, baked beans out of the can, beef stew out of the can. Like, I didn't heat it up or anything. It's not going to kill you. It's perfectly fine. But yeah, during Hurricane Irma, I wasn't as prepared as I was. I mean, I had other things going on in my life at that time. And having cash on hand, which I actually did, I was like, well, I don't really have a whole lot of hurricane supplies, especially when it comes to, I had plenty of water, but we were just kind of low when it came to the food supply. So I did have cash. I at least prepared with that. And I went down to the local convenience store. They were without power. So anything that was in the refrigerated section was bad. So they weren't selling any of that. But anything else, like, chips and snacks and canned stuff and all that, they were selling, but they were cash only because they had no power. And that was basically the case for just about everybody else who happened to open up after the hurricane. They didn't have power. You could still go out and buy stuff. You just couldn't use credit card. You had to use cash. So that's one I would say that you definitely should be ready to have. As far as how much, I guess that's up to you. I mean, I think I had like 500 or so in cash because you just never know. You never know. But I mean, you can't predict what these hurricanes do before they get here. So, I mean, if it was bad enough, we could have been without power for like 6 weeks or something. I mean, that's what happened down in the Keys when I believe it was Irma. Maybe it was like Ian or something. But I mean, there's areas they'll get hit by a bad hurricane and they won't get power back for 6-8 weeks. So I think we got ours back in like 3 days or so after that one. But anyway, non-perishable food, that's a given. Same with water. I will say with water, in case, which I haven't had this happen to me specifically, but I've heard it's always a good idea to fill up your bathtub before a hurricane hits. And I've always done that. I've always filled up my bathtub because they said that if we lose power widespread to the point where our infrastructure's water pumps will cease to function, that would mean that we can't turn on our water, we can't flush the toilet. But if you fill up your bathtub, you can at least fill up your toilet tank and you can flush your toilet at least enough times that you've got the water available in the bathtub. So that's what I've always done. Thank God we haven't actually had to resort to that, but it's always good to be prepared, right? Or also, like using your dishwasher, if you have to evacuate, if you're in a flood-prone area and if your car's packed up and you've got just a few things that you just couldn't fit into your car that you want to leave with, you can just put it in the dishwasher. I don't know, photo albums or something. I don't know. But apparently dishwashers, they're waterproof, so you can use it as almost kind of like a ghetto safe in a way. You can just throw things in there that water could ruin, that you just don't have room for. It's not important enough to take with you, but you really don't want to do without it. Like, I don't know, like maybe your stereo or like I don't know, electronic of some sort or whatever that you just have to leave at home because you don't need it that badly, but you would like to not have it ruined. Throw it in the dishwasher and just lock your dishwasher. I don't know. I've heard that before. At least at the time I heard it, it sounded like a good idea. But anyway, flashlights and batteries, battery-powered or hand-crank radio. Definitely a NOAA weather radio. I've got one of those, and those are nice to have. First aid kit, of course, the cash, emergency blankets and bivvies, sanitation and hygiene items, of course. I mean, a lot of people probably still have an oversupply of that from the COVID era. And medications, medical supplies, important documents, of course, which includes your insurance policies, your ID, bank account records, also your birth certificate, social security card, the title of your car, things like that. You want to make sure you got that with you. And another thing that I'll throw out that I've done, take a picture of all of your important documents. Take a picture of it. If you have Google Drive, or if you have just any cloud-based service that you could just upload this to, or those documents to, upload it to that, and that way you've got it saved just in case your paper documents get ruined or get lost or whatever. I mean, you shouldn't even really need to do that just for hurricane season. I mean, I think everybody should do that just to do that, because you just never know. Or if nothing else, email it to yourself. Just take pictures of those documents, save them on your phone, and then also email them to yourself. And that way you've got your birth certificate and all that. Obviously, make sure that you keep it safe. I mean, you don't want somebody to end up with it, but so pet supplies, clothing, tools, supplies for utilities, and vehicle preparation with, gas cans, jerry cans, and stuff like that. Yeah. Also check the condition, your tires, your brakes, your oil. Make sure your coolant's good. If your car is prone to leaking certain fluids, obviously you want to make sure that you've got extra fluids and things like that. So yeah, that's always a good idea. Yeah, you want to make sure your car's in tip-top condition. Don't wait until there's a hurricane on the map. Definitely want to do that now. And yeah, because getting your vehicle maintained, we all know it's not cheap, especially these days. So anyway, that's the hurricane supplies list. And just to wrap this up, so the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, it's currently operating with a reduced budget and workforce for the 2025 hurricane season. I figured I should bring this up since John Morales brought that up. So I figured I would just at least search the web, the internet, and just kind of get some info from that. And just real quick, these sources are FEMA.gov, theguardian.com, WUSF.org. We also have CNN, Reuters, New York Times, The Atlantic. So I guess take this with a grain of salt, because, a lot of this is pretty left-leaning. Not really seeing anything that's, conservative-leaning or anything like that. But anyway, I'll just assume what they're saying. I'll take it a grain of salt, but, I'll just leave it at that. But anyway, the FEMA program that provides the most hurricane aid to Florida, which is nearly $300 million being provided to Florida annually, it's been slashed by the Trump administration. The reduction in funding is part of a broader effort to downsize FEMA, which has an annual budget of about $30 billion, which is absolutely crazy. I mean, yeah, emergency relief, yes. That's also what insurance is for. So, and I know insurance companies, they're greedy as all hell. They'll come up with any way they possibly can to deny your claim. And I mean, homeowners insurance, it's gotten nightmarish at this point. I mean, there's people, like, if they have less than, let's say, $50,000 of damage done to their house, they'll just pay it out of pocket, because over the long run, it's going to cost more money over the long run, because of the increase in your homeowner's insurance and having to deal with the nightmare of finally getting the insurance company to pay out, especially after something like a hurricane. I mean, some people, they have to wait 2-3 years before they finally get their homeowners to cough up the money. So, I mean, that's what insurance is for. I mean, the government, yes, I think that the government should help people who are the most in need as far as that goes. But you also have the state level, especially with Florida. Like, we have an operating surplus budget every year when it comes to the state government, thanks to tourism and, definitely mainly tourism for the most part. So, I mean, I think maybe the state should maybe pay a little more into it and not just fully rely on FEMA, which they don't fully rely on FEMA. But anyway, so President Donald Trump indicated his intention to significantly downsize, if not eliminate, FEMA after the 2025 hurricane season. I doubt it's getting eliminated, but that's just me. Officially began June 1st. Yeah, we know that. So Trump plans to distribute disaster relief funds directly from the president's office, marking a departure from current protocols under which FEMA oversees and the dissemination of financial aid to the states following the president's declaration of a disaster. So he just wants eyes on it. He just wants to see where the money is going exactly. I mean, I'm sure he's not going to look at, the 10,000 line items as to where every penny is going to end up. But I mean, like I said, the Hurricane Helene issue with North Carolina last year, I mean, a lot of eyes were on that. A lot of people were really devastated from that. And word around the campfire was that a lot of that was for political reasons, because they were in rural areas, which tend to be in red areas, and it was during election season, so on and so forth. But, whatever. So anyway, the let's see, National Weather Service. It's part of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Apparently, they've lost 600 employees, which is about 15% of their workforce over the past 4 months. And the reduction in staffing at both FEMA and the NWS has raised concerns among lawmakers and emergency preparedness officials about the country's readiness for the hurricane season. Again, technology. We got it all in place. Sounds like AI is going to pick up a lot of the slack. I don't know. We'll see where that goes. But anyway, the Trump administration he is moving forward with plans to phase out the agency after the 2025 hurricane season. So again, I'll believe it when I see it. That's coming from The Guardian. So, I mean, where they got that from, I don't know. I have a feeling that if I were to actually read through it, they'll probably use a buzzword such as anonymous sources or just the word sources say, quote unquote. But anyway, this is the article where they claim that that is happening. So maybe I'll read that on my own later on. But I'll go ahead and link this in the description too if you feel like reading through it. But yeah, just know that it's coming from The Guardian and it's not coming from, FEMA.gov, for instance, or from a government entity. But anyway, that is all I got. So pray for us down in the Gulf Coast area for this hurricane season. We got hit pretty hard over the last few years, really. And hopefully the East Coast, they seem to have been all right over the last few years for the most part, but let's hope that they don't really get blitzed by anything this year. I mean, Lord knows we could use a break as far as natural disasters are concerned or widespread disasters. So hopefully it'll be a quiet year. I guess we'll just have to wait and see, but that's all I got for now. So thanks for watching and see you later.